In this video, we're going to answer the most frequently asked questions of Google about what is single malt. And make sure you watch until the end because some of these questions are, well, unique. Is single malt whiskey good for you? Not if you drop it on your foot.
Ouch!
Otherwise, yeah, actually there are some health benefits. In fact, one of the good things about single malt whiskey is that it actually has no carbs, no fat, and little to no sugar. So if you're trying to lose weight, drinking single malt is a much better choice than drinking beer or wine. So yeah, drink whiskey and get thin. Probably not something I should actually say on a video. That's not an actual claim. But it's got less calories than beer. Is single malt whiskey better than blended? It depends on what decade it is. Now, right now, a lot of people will tell you that single malt whiskey is the best kind of whiskey that you can buy. And to an extent, that is true. It's certainly the most expensive whiskey you can buy, but does that make it the best? If you go back in time, blended whiskey was actually much more expensive and seen as a premium product over a single malt. So a single malt is a whiskey that comes from one distillery. Blended malt is one that is a combination of different single malts to create a specific taste. And those blends were seen as being superior because they thought, well, someone who's a lot smarter than I am, or at least has a better palate than me, has created this taste, and this taste is special. It's the best combination of single malts you can have. And that was the premier product. Now, a single malt is seen as the premier product. So, is single malt better? Not necessarily. Is single malt whiskey gluten-free? Yes! If you're a celiac or if you can't eat gluten, you can sure drink whiskey. And actually, that's kind of surprising because you wouldn't think you'd be able to drink whiskey because whiskey is made from, well, grains and rye and wheat and barley, and those are all things that celiacs can't have. But what's great about whiskey is the way that it's produced means that it is inherently gluten-free. So the way that whiskey is made is, well, so you take your grains and you basically just make a beer. And obviously celiacs can't drink beer. So you might be thinking, you're a liar. And I'm not. That's not fair. Wait. Because the next step, you take your beer and then you distill it. You put it into a still and you boil it, which takes all the alcohol vapors from your beer and makes it into a spirit. So it comes out the other end a clear alcohol, about 65% alcohol, which you then put into a cask. And you leave it in the cask and magically over a series of years you get delicious whiskey. But that process of taking and distilling your beer turns it into something that someone who's a celiac or gluten-free is able to enjoy. And that's not, the reason they do it, that's just how it's made. But as a lovely byproduct, it means that if you're a celiac, you can drink a single malt. Is single malt whiskey good for diabetes? Let's take this question and make it two parts. The first bit is about single malt and diabetes. There is medical evidence to suggest that drinking single malt can actually decrease your risk of developing diabetes, which is obviously a great thing for those of us who aren't diabetic. But the second bit of the question is, if you already are diabetic, what does that mean with drinking whiskey? So, can people that are diabetic not drink alcohol? Well, the answer is yes, people who are diabetic can drink alcohol. You just need to be more careful about it. You probably know this already and you don't need this information from me on a whiskey video, but it's important that anyone who is diabetic really thinks through what they're drinking, if they're drinking on an empty stomach, what their current blood sugar levels are. Because whiskey will impact your blood sugar and the glucose that's in your body, and that's important. But drinking whiskey is not any worse than drinking any other alcohol. So yes, a diabetic can still drink whiskey, you just need to be careful about it. Is single malt Scotch? It depends on the words around this question. Can single malt be Scotch? Yes. Is single malt only Scotch? No, but it can be. So let's take the first one. Can single malt be Scotch? Yes, absolutely. For something to be called Scotch, it needs to be from Scotland, it needs to be 3 years old, it needs to be distilled, and it needs to be put into a oak barrel for 3 years. And when it was distilled, it has to be barley that was distilled for it to be called Scotch. So if all of that is true, and it's from one distillery, then yes, single malt can be Scotch. But is single malt only Scotch? No, because you could have a single malt from the United States, you could have a single malt from Australia. Single malt doesn't mean anything other than that it's from one distillery. So, yes and no. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you learned something or if you just thought it was interesting, give us a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to our channel. And stay tuned. The next video coming up is the most frequently asked questions for Google about what is blended malt. Distilled spirits are inherently gluten-free, while whiskey has why?